What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Grab Your Gear podcast, where we speak to people who get up and work hard every single day. Those of you who make America work, that is who we speak to here. That is who we make videos for, who we make podcasts for. Now, I'm Joe Staten. I host Save the Republic here for Grab Your Gear, and I'm joined today by Jack Windsor, host of the Windsor Report 98.9 FM, and also editor-in-chief at the Ohio Press Network. So first of all, Jack, I know it's been a really busy week in politics and news, and I know you had a chance to attend some of the inaugural festivities, maybe not the actual inauguration because it was moved indoors. It was a very, very intimate setting, but how was the weekend for you? How were the festivities?
Well, first of all, thanks for asking. They were amazing, and amazing because we got to spend some time with people from all walks of life. We spent a lot of time with elected officials from the state of Ohio, from Bernie Moreno, who is he's Ohio's senior U.S. senator now. I was able to talk with him and discuss the Trump tax cuts and Jobs Act and the importance of getting those renewed permanently over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we got to walk around Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you one thing that stuck out. I don't know if any of our viewers have had the opportunity to see footage from yesterday's prayer breakfast. It's ceremonial that the president and vice president go to a prayer the day after. And there was quite a politically charged message coming from the pulpit. Later, we found out that the bishop is a female who is totally anti-Trump. But interestingly enough, she was saying that blacks and gays and women feel completely threatened by this administration. And without even knowing this is to me, one of the highlights of the trip. Within about an hour, my wife and I were walking around Washington, D.C. We talked with a gay couple, two guys, who were fully clad in MAGA gear. And I asked what they were experiencing. They said it was incredible to be there with like-minded people. They were excited about Trump's policies and where the country is going. I talked to a black man who was, selling merch on Pennsylvania Avenue. And I said, "How's business?" And he essentially said, "When Trump's in office, business is great. And I hope you understand that we are in for a true golden age and you need to take advantage of it. It comes once every 50 years. And then I talked to two women who came all the way from Seattle to watch the inauguration and participate in the festivities. So it was an interesting juxtaposition to hear an ideologue from the pulpit saying all of these groups of people are terrified of Trump. And without even knowing that was going on, we were out talking to people and we had the exact opposite encounter with folks from those people groups. So that really stuck out to me. But I will say I expected the counter protesters to be much larger in number. You could hardly see anyone there. And the folks that were there, of course, all the mainstream outlets made sure that they got the coverage. But when I say that there were people from all walks of life, from all parts of the country there, I mean it. And, the overarching, resounding message was really conveyed by a woman that we saw at lunch yesterday from Oklahoma. And I said, "How are you enjoying the festivities?" And she said, "It's really refreshing to be able to walk around and know that we're kind of back to normal, that the adults are back in the room, and we don't have to try to stave off every crazy radical policy at every turn. It's really refreshing."
Yeah, it's incredible. You mentioned the bishop, quote unquote bishop, who delivered that message to the president, and President Trump's one of his first mean tweets back in the pulpit was about this bishop. He said the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone, not compelling or smart. And that was just almost insulting to the president, to the presidency, to get up there and to speak in that manner. But Jack, just kind of following up a little bit, I know you mentioned some of the things you saw, some of the people who came to DC, but how would you describe the overall energy and spirit? I know you had a chance to be around some of the legislators from Ohio and just some figures like the Attorney General and the auditor. So what was the spirit and the energy like among those people who are, playing a part in state politics here in Ohio?
It was a combination of celebratory and then let's get to work. And when I would ask, how do you feel? What are you thinking? It was celebratory, right? Like, this is amazing. The American people have spoken. It's incredible to be here to partake in this. And as Ohioans, what a special day. J.D. Vance represents the first vice president from the Buckeye State and the first vice president to be a Marine. And the way that he handled himself was with total class. And he just really made the Buckeye State proud. That was a lot of what I was hearing. But also going to work and making sure that we focus on merit-based, uh, open market solutions for our economy, and that was really refreshing. I'm looking at this. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that Trump has already done, and one of the things was making sure that DEI is gone at the federal level, and that we're making decisions based on merit-based opportunity, and that should make folks that are listening to this feel good. They grab their gear every morning and go to work. And by the way, they'll appreciate this. Trump also is going to make sure that we return to in-person work at the federal level. You do it. Shouldn't the people that we're paying money to do our bidding in Washington, D.C. also do it? But state lawmakers and other people talked about unleashing energy abundance, making sure that those Trump tax cuts get renewed, and really securing the border. All of the blocking and tackling that the Trump administration talked about. We also heard a lot about DEI and getting wokeness out of our classrooms and figuring out how to make sure that education is safe and that it's effective and that we're producing outcomes that parents can be proud of.
Yeah, yeah, and all those things that you mentioned, we're going to get into a couple of the executive orders that we found interesting here in a minute. But Jack, I would also like to ask you because I feel like I'm noticing this really in geopolitics. Following that election, it seems like the left culturally kind of overplayed their hand. I don't know if it was following COVID with some of the drastic measures they took,
Hmm.
kind of partnering with the private sector and censorship and shutting down quote unquote misinformation and really just this odd, bizarre 1984 style, um, authoritarian style government that was kind of sweeping the globe. And it seems like humanity at large, even across the world, has kind of just responded and rejected this overarching style of government that we saw after COVID. And I think that with following Trump's election, the energy that I've noticed, and I've actually shared this with you guys on our call this morning, but my wife and I were driving back from visiting my father in Michigan, and just listening to some of the inaugural speeches and some of the activities, and there's a tangible feeling of security that comes with this victory. Having a president who actually backs what he says and actually is a masculine, strong figure on the world stage, somebody who cherishes American history and heritage, and also really is an old school style leader who does not take crap from our enemies, and somebody that we can look to for a source of strength, even being 78 years old, which is pretty incredible. But
Yeah.
Jack, would you agree that there's been a worldwide just rejection of leftism? I'm seeing like a really big cultural shift to support conservatism.
There has definitely been a shift, and I want to go back to what you said to begin, that they overplayed their hand. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound conspiratorial, and it's kind of the run of the mill saying, but it's absolutely true. The left has adopted the Alinsky playbook. They blame their enemies for the things which they are doing. And, I know a lot of attorneys, and they use this line a lot. When the law is on your side, you pound the law. When the facts are on your side, you pound the facts. When neither of them is on your side, you pound the table. And the Democrat policies have been so atrocious. All they've really been able to do is pound the table. Guilt, shame, blame, label you as racist, homophobic, Christian nationalist, all these things, right? uh, because their policies don't work. And so as they got louder, they had to silence you. And so you had the censorship industrial complex. So it's not surprising, because when you follow the Alinsky path, all you really have is bullying and shutting down. And, we're not wired that way. We're wired to be free. We're wired to enjoy liberty. We're wired to be creative. And when the government starts putting the shackles of suppression on you and saying you can't make choices, you can't be creative, we're not going to promote you based on merit. We're going to promote you based on this radical ideology that is made up. People had enough, and I think this year, over the past 12 months, about 50% of the world population was in a place where elections took place. And Javier Milei was the first one in Argentina that I went, okay, this might be signaling a shift. And it was. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who came out and painted in bold colors. He wasn't painting in pastels. He was saying this woke bullcrap does not work, and we're not going to do it anymore. And he won resoundingly. And then, of course, Trump wins. And then you just see these things like, the guy Trudeau up in Canada resigns. People are ready to live in freedom again and get back to normalcy. And when Donald Trump delivered that speech, you mentioned that it was moved inside the Capitol. We had tickets. We were going to be there if it was outside. But thanks to Congressman Mike Carey from Ohio, we were able to watch in a very small, I would say small, 100 people room, a room with about 100 people, and some elected officials, of course. But the energy in that place was palpable when Trump started talking about there are two genders, right? We are going to put America first. We're going to drill, baby, drill. I mean, it was just everybody at some point said, "We're back. We're so back."
Yeah, I really, wow. I can't even describe the feeling that I had watching that with my wife. Donald Trump sitting in front of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris after surviving assassination, talking about those things. I mean, that was one of the most epic moments in American history. It had to be, right? And just so inspiring. Something that, again, we can look to in our leader. I think we as Americans, and Jack, you also mentioned this on our call this morning, but even JD Vance having a family and having kids that, we can look up to. And
Yeah.
I know it was kind of a joke online where, you know, uh, Doug Emhoff's daughter, I think, was like this kind of like very masculine, just kind of odd looking girl. And I don't mean to pick on her or anything, but it's just a fact that she just
Hmm.
not really a normal looking person. And so I think even that is good in terms of optics to give the American people something to aspire to. Like, look, our vice president has young kids. Our president is a grandfather of, I think, I don't know how many grandkids he has now, 6, 7, something like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, even the optics. And you mentioned, conspiratorial, Jack. It's almost as if there was a globalist cabal pushing these marching orders that we had a puppet as a president that was laying down to. And it's almost as if these orders were basically fully implemented and the American people had enough. But we probably shouldn't go down that path of conspiracy. And so, any final comments on this aspect before we get into some of the executive orders?
I really I like JD Vance as a human being. The Ohio Press Network, we were blessed with the exclusive opportunity to write a feature on him when he went into the United States Senate. And one of the key elements of that piece that I was able to write was that don't bet against JD Vance because odds are he's going to defy the odds. And here he is. And it was just there was something captivating about him carrying his daughter who's sucking her thumb. She's got little bandages on her fingers. I mean, we all have kids that suck their thumbs that have bandages on their fingers. And the boy's carrying a teddy bear, and later on at one of the dinners, you see a picture of him and his arms kind of hanging over the panel, and he's just sitting there like, this is kind of boring, Dad. I mean, it's something that we can all relate with, and it was so refreshing to see a little girl in a dress and a little boy in a suit carrying a teddy bear. Not a boy acting like a girl, and parents not being rigid, but like being in the moment as leaders, but also acknowledging, hey, this is my family, this is my team. It was beautiful, man. And I'm flat out excited about where we're going to go. But make no mistake about it, the Republicans have about an 18-month window of opportunity here, and they need to make hay while the sun is shining. Because I think, and I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound crazy. I think we're in a divine moment right now. You talked about Trump standing there saying what he said about surviving assassination. I can't quote which part of scripture it is, but there's a part of scripture that says, "I will prepare a table for you in front of your enemies." And there was Trump speaking in front of his enemies, like, "Hey, you fired the fiery darts at me, bro, and I survived, and I'm here, and we're going in a different direction now." It was cool, but I hope we can captivate and capture that energy and do some really productive stuff with it.
Literally everything. I mean, how many things could we list off? The assassination attempts, the lawsuits, the slandering by the media, the banning of off Twitter. I mean, just endless assault on this guy, and there he is, sworn in as president. It's just, I don't know. It makes you want to smile. It's just very inspiring. And so that
Absolutely.
brings us, yeah, that brings us to our next point, which is, you mentioned the censorship industrial complex.
Hmm.
And interestingly, we saw the lineup of Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Google CEO, which I'm not going to pronounce his name because I don't want to mess it up. But all these tech giants who 4 years ago, basically, I would say, conspired in some way to get in the way of a President Trump's second term in 2020.
Hmm.
But now they are at the inauguration. And so I'm not somebody who's so quick to jump in support of them and just forget what happened. And so, one of the executive orders that President Trump signed that I want to get your thoughts on, Jack, and then if you have any that you wanted to share as well, was the withdrawal from the World Health Organization, which was a massive victory, in my opinion, for free speech and for America's sovereignty and independence.
Hmm.
Because I actually had direct experience with this. YouTube, which is a company of Google's, has a policy where if you contradict the World Health Organization's guidance, they will either slap a label on your video of misinformation or potentially take it down. I had several of my videos taken down when I was working on my channel. They actually gave me a channel strike for misinformation, quote unquote, that went against the WHO's guidance by saying that the CDC was investigating the COVID vaccines, which is crazy. So I have very personal experience with this, but any thoughts on that executive order and just the importance of establishing that we are our own nation, and any other orders that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to acknowledge and get back in line with this notion that we control our destiny, not the World Health Organization. That's just from a fundamental blocking and tackling standpoint. I will always believe that. Now, people will label me a white Christian nationalist, and you're no. Actually believe in the global economy, but I also understand that you have a locus of control as a person and as a country, and you need to exercise it. And the reason that I believe that even more emphatically was, no one knew who I was before COVID, and I was quite comfortable with that. But it was COVID that put me on the map, that put the Ohio Press Network on the map, because we kept calling out Governor Mike DeWine here in Ohio, because he was acting in the beginning a lot like Gavin Newsom in California, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, and then the crazy governor out there in New York in terms of draconian policies. But during that very dark period of American history, I was able to talk with one of the top industrial hygienists in the country about masking and how it doesn't not only does it not work, it actually creates negative health outcomes. Dr. Martin Koldorf, Dr. Marty McCary, those are names that you know and you hear. These were the people who were standing up and going, "We're not going in the right direction," and they were canceled, which should alarm everybody. But I was, kind of on the front line with those folks, getting the information and recognizing the mitigation strategies that we were trying to utilize did not make sense. One, and then number two, we were creating such a force against individual liberty and against sober minded consideration for medical intervention. I don't care what it is that you're considering. As a human being, you have a right to say, I want to consider the cost and the benefit of this intervention. And because I could have conscientious, religious, biologic, some sort of, opposition to this, and I have to consider everything based on my individual makeup. And all of that went out the door. And I say all of that to say this: it was the World Health Organization, it was the CDC, it was those groups together that were bastardizing the science and that were absolutely pressuring people and trying to cancel them if they were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, the irony as well is that initially the WHO published guidance that said that COVID-19 was not transmissible from human to human. So So at that time, if you would have made a YouTube video or posted on Twitter or Facebook that, hey, you can get COVID by talking to your neighbor or by coughing on somebody, they could have taken you down. They probably did for
Yep.
misinformation. So it just shows you the irony and just the lunacy of giving a group control of speech. And it's so dangerous. Again, it's 1984. It's Orwell-esque. Um,
I do want to
okay,
make
you have
one other
something to say,
point real
Jack?
quick, Joe, if I may, because you
Sure.
talked about the tech giants. And I know we still want to talk about some of these orders. You talked about the tech giants. I think it's important to make this point. Those folks are going to do what's best for their shareholders. So the moment Mark Zuckerberg did an about face, I went, well, of course he is, because that's what's better for his shareholders. And by the way, that's his obligation. His obligation is to increase shareholder value. The other important point to remember is corporations, they really don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. They just want to know who it's going to be, because you know what they'll do? They will adjust. And we can't lose sight of this simple fact that nobody in the press talks about very often. You can tax corporations, but corporations will pass that cost on to you as a consumer. So when we talk about, the wealthy paying their fair share and corporations, well, what you're really doing is you're increasing the price of consumer goods and products, and middle Americans are paying for it, because that's what businesses will do. They will adjust. So I'm not surprised that these folks are coming out now in support of Trump and saying, all right, this is the bandwagon. We're going to jump on this. How can we profit from it? And we just have to keep that in the front of our minds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like it was socially impossible for them to do so the first time around, but now when you've seen, all these celebrities coming out supporting Trump, all these rappers, Logan Paul, these guys, Jake Paul, it's popular to like Donald Trump now. So, it's socially acceptable. So, of course, if it helps their shareholders, they're going to do it. I'm just saying, I think we should all remain a little bit skeptical and weary of these people and not give them our full level of trust when it comes to things like free speech, because we saw the grotesque actions they took to violate our rights. So just something we
Yeah.
should keep an eye on, in my opinion. But lastly, something I wanted to touch on, you already kind of mentioned this, Jack, but I saw this tweet of this executive order that the Trump administration already has ordered all DEI offices to be closed at all government agencies, I think by Thursday, which
Yeah.
was really fast. It was almost immediate. And I think we should kind of briefly touch on what this might mean for our listeners. I know we
Hmm.
speak to, merit shop workers, trades workers, but really just anybody who cares about building a life and building, the American dream here in the States. And so, I think this is a huge deal because it's not only, impacting those in the government agencies. This is a message being sent by the president and his administration to say, we are not going to operate in this world anymore. And I have a
Sorry.
really quick personal story to share, if you will. My brother
Yeah.
just graduated from a very respected institution, his MBA, Master's of Business Administration, and many of his friends are, getting jobs in their fields. And a lot of the companies have been hired at, Jack, you just said these corporations don't care about Republicans or Democrats. It's just what meets the bottom line. And that's so true because some of these positions are, limited to carbon capture and DEI initiatives, and even some of my brother's friends who are not, not liberal at all are getting these DEI positions because the companies are providing for them. And I think it really says a lot. Why are they doing that? Is it because it's making them more money, or is it because they're getting some sort of tax break? And I think it's probably the latter. There's probably a lot of benefits, but I think getting back to the executive order, I think projecting this on the national stage, I think we're going to start to see a lot of companies, and I think we already have actually, cutting their DEI departments and also just cutting this ideology, which is more important in my opinion, to stop projecting that we're not going to give you a position based on your race or gender or sexuality. Also, couple with that, Jack, and I'll throw it to you for final thoughts here. I saw President Trump rescinded Lyndon B. Johnson's order establishing essentially affirmative action in government, which is incredible. So we've eliminated what remained of affirmative action, coupled with DEI and federal agencies. Any final thoughts on those, Jack?
Yeah. Several final thoughts, and I'll try to bring it all around the barn pretty quickly. We need to get back to merit, bottom line. And I think Trump is committed to doing that based on the fact that he's, as of Wednesday night, all DEI employees in the federal government are on leave. And so, by the way, if you want to weigh in on this and you're listening, if you want to go to X at Jack Windsor, I have a survey up there now. Particularly if you're in Ohio, I want to know how you feel about this. The Ohio State University spends $13 million on diversity, equity, and inclusion at that university. And my question is, should that be shut down right away? And then even, local school districts, high school districts, Olentangy Local School District in Delaware, Ohio, one of the largest school districts, spends a boatload of money on DEI. Should those be shut down? We have 126 votes there already. I just put that up about 25 minutes ago. 97% of people say yes, those should be done away with. And so I think that is a step in the right direction. What I would also like to see, though, and so here's what that means. That means if you're going to contract with the federal government, you probably have a fighter's chance now. If you're not, if you're not checking all the ideological boxes, all the race boxes, right, all the gender, whatever those boxes were. So that is a win for merit. The other thing that will be interesting to see is that Trump, in that order, I got into the innards of one of those orders, and he actually said that even in the private sector, and that's where most of you reside, even in the private sector, if you're making decisions on DEI, that violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So what would be interesting to me to see is if the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, comes out and says, look, if you're being passed over because of merit and they're favoring DEI, file these complaints. That might have a huge impact on the private sector. I don't know. And I don't know what the interplay is there. But I'll tell you where I'd like to see this ultimately go is not only base it on merit, but let's take a look at these project labor agreements at the federal level, and let's get rid of those too. Let's stop increasing the cost of public works projects by 30 to 40%. And we can talk more in depth about that and how that happens later. But I think this is a win. I think this is, we've hit a double and we're on second base. And now we'll see what the next couple of hitters do here in this inning to see if we can, bring it around and score a run for merit and free markets.
Yeah, there's really been so much news the past 2 to 3 days. As we kind of anticipated, President Trump's workload and what he is able to do is just incredible for his age, but also just so much more compared to the previous president, which again is just inspiring. I don't know about you, Jack, but President Trump's first term, I was almost every day posted on these press conferences and just following the happenings. And it's just an exciting time to be an American. I'm proud to be an American. I know you are very proud yourself. And so we're going to keep you guys posted every week on Wednesdays here, the GYG Podcast. Jack has a great radio show, 98.9 FM, The Answer, The Windsor Report, and also, as we've said, the editor-in-chief at the Ohio Press Network, which we at Grab Your Gear help produce some of the content over there now. So be sure you follow OPN on Twitter. I think it's at Ohio Press and at Jack Windsor on Twitter. And we appreciate everybody tuning in today, and we'll catch you next Wednesday. Hope you all have a great week.
See y'all.